Welcome to episode 287 of the Working Fans Podcast, where a lot of big news today, and I'll tell you who's not turning heel is Game Up Hard Hydration. It's like your favorite sports drink and your favorite seltzer got together, became so much better of a creation. Dave, why don't you tell them about the stats on this bad boy?
All right, guys. It comes in an 8-pack with 4 great flavors: fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and Joe's personal favorite, grape. And it's only 110 calories, so you don't have to feel guilty or feel like a bad guy when enjoying it.
Now, today, we are going to be talking about Elimination Chamber, but there is something Dave said we had to talk about at the top of the show, and it's probably the most, I would say, the most noteworthy thing coming out of Elimination Chamber. Dave, what did you think about this?
So, John Cena turning heel. This was interesting. It's more than interesting. I mean, it's impressive. It's crazy. And all these years of, people wanting to see John Cena turning heel and never getting it. And now we finally do. Somebody told me it's a thing of beauty. But it was a wild, wild thing. I mean, I guess let's just talk about this whole segment and we'll do the rest of Elimination Chamber later. But, Cena wins the chamber, and it's just something like, I remember it's a small thing now, but Rollins, who had been eliminated, ends up, attacking Punk, and Cena takes advantage and gets the win. But it's done in a way that you don't really think that, okay, it's just John. But I remember thinking, like, that's a little unusual for John to take the shortcut, seeing the win. But I'm like, well, whatever. He didn't do it. It's anything goes. And then Cody comes out, and then The Rock comes out, and Cena's never left the ring. And I thought, this is odd, And at this point now, Rock is talking to Cody. I want your soul. I need that soul. And Cody tells him to go fuck himself, which that was shocking in itself. Like, if you don't know, yet, like, Cody says the F word on a live pay-per-view, whatever is pay-per-view, but still, that was shocking. But then Cena is just like, yeah, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, John Cena's going to turn heel. John Cena's going to turn heel. And then he hugs Cody, and he looks at The Rock, and he just gives Rock this look, and Rock gives him the throat slice like Double A going for a spine buster, and Cena just kicks him in the nuts. Travis Scott is there, by the way. For those who don't know, he's hanging out with The Rock. He hasn't left the ring. And they're just all beating up on Cody Rhodes, and John Cena busts Cody Rhodes open, and it is just a wild, wild scene. And when John's hanging around the ring, I'm thinking he's turning heel, but just seeing it is still so shocking. And I was joking around with somebody. It's almost like all those years of bad booking by Vince and not giving the fans what they want makes it even that more special now. Like, we're finally getting that Cena heel turn. And I got to tell you, Cena with The Rock going up against Cody Rhodes for WrestleMania 41 this year, just awesome stuff. Awesome stuff, and a great way to position Cody Rhodes as your top babyface in the company again.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Andrew Nance, Cody, the American Dream. Andrew Nance, hopefully you're following us. Dan is cool, 009 or 09. I hope he holds the belt all year. Love seeing the comments here. And I really enjoy this Cena heel turn. It's one of those things we haven't really seen from him yet. And since it's going to be the retirement tour, why not do something different? Why not change it up? Yes. And this personally has me excited for this match at WrestleMania. Now we have yet another match set up, and it's just making the whole Cena retirement tour feel bigger. It's making WrestleMania overall feel bigger. Thank you very much. Hey, we won't be talking LFG because, Dave, have you watched LFG yet?
Well, I think he might have been saying, let's fucking go. But yes, LFG. A&E, I did. I was getting my shit in here. I did catch some of it. Jury's still out. I'm watching it now. I haven't decided how I feel. It's okay, but it's still it's reality show like, and I'm not really a reality show guy. So
yeah, I haven't watched it. And the only other thing I wanted to fit in, I didn't have a graphic for it, was WWE 2K25 comes out this week. I think it's March 7th. I got the Bloodline edition. I'm excited for it. And we're going to move on to the next segment because I didn't have graphics for those little pieces of news. But the rest of Elimination Chamber, a lot of good matches on this show. What stood out for you before we cover the whole show?
But all right, so before we might as well just start covering it now, because here's the deal. Before like we even get to the end, was the most shocking thing with John Cena turning heel. The show kicks off with Jade Cargill returning right at the start of the Women's Elimination Chamber. She's staring down Liv Morgan, and right away you're like, okay, this is too obvious. And she just turns around and starts beating up Naomi. And Bianca is going nuts. She's trapped in the chamber. Bianca is absolutely crazy. Jade beats the hell out of Naomi, throws her all around into different pods, slams the cage door, and they just stretch her out, Naomi, and said she's been eliminated. In the end, Bianca comes out next, and she manages to put on a hell of a performance because she goes the whole way and ends up winning the match. And I wonder at the end of this now what's going to happen. I mean, I think Bianca, we're going to find out down the road, is that she was playing all of us, and she's actually maybe the one to attack Jade. Or at the very least, her and Naomi were both part of it. And I'm curious now if it's going to be – I don't see Io Sky winning. They did show Io Sky last week because they had a face-off with Ripley and Bianca. Or last night, I should say. But I don't see Io winning that title on Raw this week. They're playing into that. But I got to think this is going to be Rhea versus Bianca and possibly Naomi and Jade being added to the mix here. The rest of the show, Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus got the win over Nia Jax and Candice. Great to see Trish get a win hometown. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Crazy. Unsanctioned match, a lot of violence here. I loved it. Kevin gets the win, and then another shocking.
When you get the two of them in there.
Well, I mean, another shocking here too. I mean, Randy Orton comes back at the end of this, and now Randy Orton gets into it with Kevin Owens, and we got to have Kevin Owens and Randy Orton for WrestleMania, and of course, we already know about the men's chamber. John Cena wins the whole thing. Pins Punk after Seth Rollins stomps Punk after Seth was eliminated. Just a great show. And of course, it all leads with John Cena turning heel on Cody Rhodes.
Oh no, are we riding dead air here? Because I didn't know you were done talking.
I thought we were on delay, and I'm like, how long do I want to let him do this?
Well, this was a heck of an Elimination Chamber. Truth be told, I won't be watching it till this afternoon. But of course, doing the podcast, you get spoilers. We already talked about how wild I thought it was that John Cena turned heel. I thought it was even more wild that he won the Elimination Chamber because I felt Punk had a good chance at it. I thought Cena was going to get some kind of story going forward, but I thought it was almost going to be in him losing as opposed to him winning. I cannot wait to see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn because they always put on a heck of a match. They did it in ROH. They've done it in other companies, and it's great that they did it here. Overall, I'm very excited for Elimination Chamber. Sounds like it was a heck of an event.
Yeah.
And coming up 2 weeks almost, we have NXT Roadblock going on in New York City, the theater at MSG. Dave, what do you think about this card and kind of how it's forming up right now?
So this is becoming stacked, and this is the case of sometimes a negative thing turn into a positive. Rumor is Julia is hurt, and that's why they've rushed this match. It'll be Julia versus Stephanie Vaquer, title for title. So So you got the North American Women's Champion and the Women's Champion title for title. That's going to be great. But I mean, on the same card now, we find we're getting Moose, the TNA X Division Champion, versus Obafemi for the NXT Championship. And, you know, that's just a sight, right? Moose, Obafemi. Like, you talk about NXT TNA relationship, like, really, you know, this is what stuff we want to see. And the other thing we want to see, we've been talking about it for a while on this channel. I've been bringing it up, is the Hardys versus Faxium. And that's going to be for the TNA tag titles. And so I don't see the titles. I do see Julia's probably going to lose the title, but I don't think the other titles are changing hands. I think Oba will keep his NXT title, and I think the Hardys will keep the the TNA tag titles. But I do think it's possible we're not done with the Hardys and Faxium after this match. Something tells me they'll meet again for the NXT titles, and that'll probably be at Stand and Deliver and maybe a ladder match.
Yeah, there was also the news this week of Hardys getting a WWE shirt, which this is kind of wild that I think it's the first time that a team that's out of the company got merch in the company. Obviously, the Hardys have been there before, so it's not a big surprise, but it's just kind of more, you know, working toward showing that working relationship between the companies and how comfortable it's gotten. And wouldn't that be something if Faxium got the TNA titles, Moose got the NXT title, and then you're almost kind of further muddying the waters there?
It would be crazy. I don't see that happening right now, but I think down the road we're destined to have some stuff like that happen.
Now, I did catch something last night. I can't remember if it was on the pre-show or during the show because I was walking in and out of the room that the TV this was on, but they showed a preview for Evolve, which debuts this week on TV, and it looks like Kylie Ray is going to be a part of Evolve. So we're seeing some of that WWE ID talent get in there. I personally am very excited for that. And I'm only talking about it because it's starting to show more of the growth of that developmental side of WWE with NXT, with LFG, with Evolve. Obviously, us being not huge fans of reality TV, we're going to gravitate less towards the LFG. I think we have a soft spot for Evolve and NXT Roadblock. This is going to be the show to see, I feel like, in 2 weeks. I'm more excited for this than kind of anything going on in like AEW, ROH right now, which is wild.
Yeah, no, NXT, it's consistently been like my favorite wrestling show almost every week. Like, don't get me wrong. Last night, you know, WWE main roster showed like what it can do and it's cooking on all cylinders. But like, if you're looking for consistently just like the best stuff going on, NXT right now, especially with his working relationship with TNA, is doing it for me.
Hell yeah, you can call us Laffy Taffy because we just stretched the shit out of that segment. And talking about making the most of a segment, we have 3 comparisons for you this week. I picked 3 of my recent favorites that Dave put up. And obviously, I had to start with the British Bulldogs versus Miracle Violence Connection. Dave, you and I were talking about Williams and Gordy yesterday, how people respond to shorts that you put up of these two guys. What do you think it is for the fans about Williams and Gordy that really pulls the people in and gets the attention to the shorts page?
Just a badass tag team, you know, hard hitting. And I talk tag team wrestling with a lot of people that go on our channel all the time, especially teams of the past. And people love the Steiner brothers. And when you look at like one of the Steiner brothers' greatest rivals, you know, it was Williams and Gordy. They kind of had their number a lot of times. And I think, but more than anything, it was those hard hitting matches. And then for anybody who ever has gone and looked at their stuff in Japan, you know, it's just incredible. Actually, I saw something yesterday. I think it was Williams and Gordy I found online against Davey Boy Smith and Bam Bam Bigelow from All Japan. So it's just a lot of cool stuff out there with the Miracle Violence. I like this comparison because I feel like the Bulldogs, you know, they were super strong, especially Davey Boy, but then Dynamite was so technical and, you know, like a Jushin Liger type, right? You know, he had that high flying that he was doing at the time. He had that great feud with Tiger Mask. So I just really like this comparison when you look at like these two teams. Like on American soil, the Bulldogs were obviously probably more successful out of the two, given the time period where they were shining. But overall, what you look at Williams and Gordy did in Japan, and then you look at like Gordy in particular, like part of the Freebirds. It's a great comparison. I like Gordy and Williams though here. I think overall they were the better tag team.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about Williams and Gordy, everything you said about them, I feel like could be applied to the British Bulldogs as well. Great tag team, did good in Japan, hard hitting, not similar styles body wise. Obviously, Dynamite being a little smaller, but he made up for that height in the tenacity in which he wrestled. And, they could stand toe to toe with anybody. I think sometimes when people think the British Bulldogs, they think that classic WWF run, the gimmick with the Bulldog. But this was one of the great tag teams coming out of North America. But you put these two teams head to head. I'm right there with you. It's kind of hard not to pick Williams and Gordy, just because of the gravitas they have in wrestling history.
Yeah, I agree. Williams and Gordy got to get it for me. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, we go from one tag team comparison to another. And I picked this one because I more wanted to ask about it. What made you decide to put the Hardys up against the Brainbusters? Because when I see this comparison, they're two great tag teams, but to me, they're almost vastly different types of tag teams.
Honestly, I was looking at things with the Hardys against Faxium this week, or not this week, but in a couple of weeks at MSG. And I was just looking at the success they had, and I started thinking about all the comparisons I've done with tag team, and I realized I never did the Hardy Boys and the Brainbusters. And I thought, wow, this is a good one, because to me, the Hardy Boys are like the evolution of like teams like the Rock and Roll Express and the Rockers. And when you look at teams like that and seeing the kind of matches they had with Double A and Tully, it's like, man, it's a bummer we never got this matchup, because all of Double A, Iron Anderson, Tully Blanchard, the Brainbusters in their prime, the Horsemen, whatever you want to call them, like they would have had outstanding matches with the Hardy Boys. This would have been fun to watch. Now, Hardy Boys are a more legendary tag team, but at the end of the day, I just got to go with Blanchard and Anderson. I just feel like when I think of tag team wrestling and I think of double team moves and how they set things up, like to me, they're the better tag team. But you can't go wrong with the Hardys. I might even be in the minority here.
Now, if you put these two in the ring, obviously the Hardy Boys would be that more charismatic team that would get the crowd going. The Brainbusters could get the crowd going, but it was really through their technical ability. And I think these guys would do great, riling the crowd up. I'm right there with you, though. I would have to pick Brainbusters in this. What is going on, Sean? Thank you for watching us today. Hopefully you're subscribed. And we got one more comparison for you here today. We got caught up with real life this week, so we are going to be a week behind in our Raw Vault review. Maybe I'll get a solo review in so we don't miss it. But, Elimination Chamber was the bulk of what we had to talk about. Obviously, we were excited for Roadblock, and we are stretching it with comparisons. And I chose this last one because I really enjoyed the thought of it. Sean Waltman versus Marty Jannetty, two guys that had great careers. I would argue Waltman's was much better just because he was able to overcome his issues a little better than Marty was able to.
Interesting thought. Of course, you would come up with overcoming the drug issues. I think that that's interesting. But if I were to take, let's say I take all the drug issues out of it, right? And let's say we just talk about, first off, these two former tag team partners, former tag team champs together briefly. And, you just look at the skill set. Like Marty in his prime could go. But Waltman, he was one of those guys they said could have a great match with anybody. And I think I remember Jericho saying once when he was struggling with the WWE system, they put him in there with Sean Waltman, and they said, put him in there with the Kid. If he can't have a match with Kid, then he can't have a good match with anybody, I'm going to give it to Waltman too, but here's why. Because at the end of the day, even though Marty was a former Intercontinental Champion, although briefly, Waltman was a part of two very legendary groups. He was a part of the NWO. He was one of the earlier members in its day. And of course, he was part of the Generation X with Triple H. And it was him coming over from WCW with that night after WrestleMania 14 that really, really helped kickstart everything, and then at the end of that show with the Outlaws and everything. So, just being a part of those two factions right there. And I think he's got 2 Hall of Fame rings now because of that. I'm going to give Waltman the edge here.
Yeah, I'm going to give Waltman the edge. And I only brought up the drugs at the beginning because what I was thinking in my head was that Marty had a much shorter career. Sean Waltman, despite everything that went on, was able to go through different chapters of his career. He started off as the kid, then made it over, made it to those USWA, came up, made it to WCW, went to WWE, and then had a run in the indies after that. So he was able to do so much with his time. Malenko trainee, which always, I feel like when you have that cosign in wrestling, it just puts you up that much higher. Even though I was probably a bigger Jannetty fan in the day just because I was so into the Rockers, it has to be Waltman. And it's got to be noted, too, that when the Rockers first started off, Jannetty was known as the better worker of the two. So it's kind of wild how history came back around on that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, 2 greats. Possibly underrated in a lot of ways, but 2 greats.
Now, Dave, did anything else stand out for you this week in wrestling? I did not catch AEW. Was there anything worth noting on the show this week?
Outrunners are going to get a tag title shot at AEW Revolution against the Hurt Syndicate. That's something I've enjoyed. Will Nightingale ended up giving a concerto to Marina Shafir, while Copeland gave one to Claudio. So we are now down to just Mox and Wheeler Yuta of the Death Riders. They took out Pac about a week ago. So they're trying to isolate Mox as right now Cope gets ready to challenge for that AEW championship. It's some interesting TV going on. I'd say the things that interest me the most personally in AEW right now are Hangman Page and MJF. And basically, I wish they were on TV more, but the Hurt Syndicate, I think I've said it here before, I really just like the stuff they're doing. But right now, AEW, there's so much stuff going on, unless you're a super, super diehard, it's hard for me to have that as my focus especially after last night, everything happening with Cena turning heel and everything. And as we get ready for WrestleMania. And on top of that, like you said in this show, NXT to me has just been so solid with this relationship with TNA that, it's just been a hotter commodity. But hey, AEW Revolution is going to be next Sunday. I'm sure we'll preview it here. And I'm sure it'll be a lot of good stuff.
Oh, that's right. It is. It's next Sunday night, so we can preview it next week. I was pulling it up on Google like we were about to do it right now. Let's make a bold prediction. I want to ask you about that title. Do you think Copeland takes that title off of Moxley's hands? Is this the end of the Death Riders?
Nah. I'm going to say that Jay White is actually going to turn on Cope. So when all looks lost for Mox, he has an ace up his sleeve. It'll be Jay White. That's my prediction. Maybe somebody else, but I think that'll be. And I will say this though: if Cope wins this title, I say Christian Cage is going to cash in on that contracting on him, and he's taking that title. So.
He's got to, right? They can't. Even if Copeland immediately defends that title, Christian has to respond by taking it, right?
Yeah, it's just going to be their lifelong feud. I think, until they eventually team up together and retire together is my prediction.
Now, what's your level of excitement for Revolution? Because I actually had to look it up while you were talking about it because I didn't even know it was next Sunday.
Yeah, it's just not very high right now at the moment. It's not that it's going to be a bad show. I just, storyline wise with everything going on, I've just not enough time in my day to devote everything to them. And, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be a good show. I'm sure I'll enjoy it once I watch it, but I'm not feeling pressed like I have to watch it. Like last night, I was like, even though like that was a stinker of a segment last week with Rock and Cody, I was like, okay, this is going to go somewhere still. I know they're going to do something. I didn't know we were going to get Cena as a heel. I didn't know Cody was going to tell him to go fuck himself on TV. Those things right there. I said this in a group chat last night. F-bomb, Cena heel turn, and blood. We're off to WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Like, that's a way to kick off a WrestleMania. Like, I'm in. You got me. So, but AEW, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll be good. I hope that they'll do things to manage to get me as excited. But right now, I'm just kind of like, okay, it's AEW. You're still the second, biggest show in North America. I want to keep up with you. I want to know what you're doing. But
I would argue third biggest show because NXT, they keep our like eyes on it week to week. And the thing that we're saying now about AEW, we used to say about NXT, where it's like, I don't keep up with the weekly TV, but the pay-per-views are good. And it's kind of like now everything NXT is good.
I'm not going to argue with that. Like, I would just kind of keep it NXT under the WWE umbrella. But yes, I mean, if you're talking about just in terms of shows, which is what I said. Yes, I would agree with that. NXT, even to get bigger ratings consistently now, and if you're talking about it just being a more, it's going to piss off some people probably, but if you're talking about just being more of like a hot commodity and you have my interest peak creatively, and I'm just talking about mine, some weeks TNA has got me a little more interested. And part of that is like if TNA's doing a live show, like I'm like, ooh, TNA's got a live show this week. I want to see that. Because it's not something they do. And I'm wondering, like, oh, who's going to show up, And, like, even TNA this week, they did a tape show. I made it a point to watch some of it. And it was, like, the System versus Obafemi and the Hardy Boys. And I'm like, what a fucking team is that? You know what I mean? Like, that's great shit. I'm excited to see that. So, we'll see what happens. The Colognes just joined the System in TNA, too, now. So the Colognes are going to get a shot, and they're talking about, their legacy, is about heritage and about violence. And it's like, man, I like to hear the Colognes talking about violence because we know this through the wrestling magazines growing up that their father had a bloodbath with Abdullah the Butcher in Puerto Rico. And we've never seen that side of the Colognes in the States, So
yeah, it'd be wild to see them kind of live up to that. And there's so much great going on in wrestling. Yeah. There's so much good going on in wrestling that I don't even have a transition this week to the commercial. So here's Game Up Hard Hydration. Take it to the face. If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store. Author Ray Lopez presents Lockup, professional wrestling in our world. Lockup dives headfirst into the colorful world of professional wrestling. Explore the iconic characters, careers, matches, history, and families, and delve into the bizarre and fascinating entwining of professional wrestling and film, television, football, politics, gender, and race. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com. This is the perfect gift for the wrestling fan in your life. Pick up a copy today on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com.
Hey, all you goddamn wrestling fans out there, listen, Old Black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle Black Bart. It's got some dadgum good stories in there about some dadgum good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erich, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing, that it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long, long time.
Get your book today at Russellville.com or on Amazon. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.
Hey fans, it's the man they call Dave with producer Joe. And you probably know us as the commentary team for New Heights Pro Wrestling. But when we're not doing that, we got a podcast.
That is the Working Fans Podcast, where we talk pro wrestling, comedy, MMA, and so much more.
And tell them about that signature segment.
Oh, you talk about the 531?
You know I am.
That is a homegrown creation that has been our namesake. And if you want to know our namesake, we got Chevy, AJ Strange Brew, as well as the two of us.
And why don't you go to our channel, like, subscribe, show us some love.
Rate, review, all of it.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories, including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville. It's where wrestling lives.